Welcome to Line Talkers Podcast. This is Kenny Adams, and today I get the privilege to co-host this episode with my good friend Kim. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I would love to call myself a talented storyteller, but in reality, my friends, coworkers, and family would probably say that I tend to exaggerate and embellish things a little bit just to get a good laugh, jab, or any reaction for that matter. Well, that's all true, but I can tell you that from my heart of hearts, today, the experience that I'm going to share with you is truly overwhelming. It's one of the most solemn, patriotic things we can do as Americans. Even those of you great men and women who made the choice to sacrifice and serve our great country would agree with me that going to Arlington National Cemetery and witnessing the changing of the guard ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown fills you with a range of emotions. There's respect, pride, sadness, patriotism, and just so many other feelings that I can't describe in this intro. Without going and experiencing it for yourself, you just really can't describe it. But even after going, you still can't put your finger on it or put your feelings into words. About 2.5 years ago, I was in D.C. and I had the opportunity to go to Arlington and see it all for myself. As you enter through the Visitor Center and make your way on the long walk up the hill, there's thousands and thousands of headstones, no matter which direction you look, that marks the graves of so many lives given for you and I. As you continue to walk up the hill, there's many names that we recognize. There's presidents, astronauts, sports figures, and actors, all who have served and laid to rest here. As I recall my visit, I think about all the unrest in the country right now and all the rights that we've been afforded to speak our mind and many other freedoms, such as even me doing this podcast, that we owe to the men and women in uniform, especially the ones who gave their life for the cause. Today we give honor to those who gave not only their lives, but did so unidentified. Those unknowns, some 4,700 plus, laid to rest here in Arlington National Cemetery alone. We give special attention to those tombs that represent the ones lost and were not identified through the many conflicts this great country has fought to maintain the freedoms that I mentioned that we often take for granted. In just a second, you're going to hear Kim and I talk to a truly great American who earned that right to be a sentinel at the tomb ceremony, who I saw 2.5 years ago, and I was fortunate enough to get in contact with him this past Memorial Day. Through his hard work and dedication for this cause, along with that same commitment to his country, Sergeant Chris Seaman gives us a glimpse of what it's like to be a member of that elite group, the Old Guard, and how he achieved the least awarded badge in the Army, the Tomb Badge. Make no mistake, with every question we came at him with, he always responded and redirected our attention from him and his distinguished platoon to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, including their identities. May God bless this country, the men and women who have served, and to those who are serving now, and most of all today, we thank the unknowns for giving not only their lives, but also their identities. May they rest in peace.
First, I wanted to start off and tell you that it's such a pleasure to be able to visit with you today, and thank you very much for your service from the bottom of my heart. My dad is military. I know that what you do is such a huge honor, and I just want you to know that it's a huge honor for myself, and I know for Kenny as well, to take this time to visit with you today. So thanks, Chris.
Well, absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I'm always happy to come tell people about the unknowns and what we do as guards. So, yeah. My name is Christopher Seaman. I am a sergeant in the active duty Army. For the last 2 years, I served as a sentinel and squad leader at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington, Virginia. That is my most recent assignment, but I am organic to the Army as a military police officer. I've served both on Fort Myer in Virginia, and I also did a year in Korea, which strangely enough is how you and I got to talking, because the individual who put us in contact on Instagram is actually one of the guys that I served with in Korea. I grew up in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. If you're familiar with Yuengling beer, you know Pottsville. Grew up there and joined the Army a little bit after high school and kind of never looked back, yeah.
That's great. Did you spend your entire life before you joined the military there in Pennsylvania, or did you get to adventure out before you did that, or did you just join right in right after you graduated?
So I got to do a little bit of adventuring around. It's kind of a weird story, but to make it short, I had a little bit of maybe eighth of a life crisis, right? And I figured, I should join the Army. And so that's what I ended up doing. And it's been a great decision thus far.
Did you have any family that was in the military, or are there outside influences that made you join?
Sure. So, yeah, that's an interesting thing. People always ask me that, and the answer is no. I don't think I knew a single person, either in my immediate family or extended family, or even in my, social orbit that had been in the service before. I just knew that I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my life just yet, and the service seemed like a great means by which to figure that out. I kind of joined and knew that maybe it's not something that I want to make a career out of just yet, but at the end of it all, I'll have an opportunity to go to college and explore a lot of different opportunities along the way. And so that was kind of my motivation for having joined, and it's kind of evolved and transcended into something far far larger than what I intended it to be, right?
Yeah, so it sounds like you signed up just to kind of get things started for your life, and now it's changed, and now it is your life. Is that worked out?
Very much so. Yeah, I would say that that's fair.
That's so cool.
You mentioned you thought you had, what was it? What did you call it? An eighth of a midlife crisis?
Yeah, an eighth of a life crisis. Yeah.
So I will tell you, when you get our age, a midlife crisis like that means you buy a motorcycle or a boat or you move across the country. So you did the right thing. I would just tell you.
Yeah, everything's relative, I suppose. Yeah.
So have you been able to travel since you've been in the military and go a lot of places, or are you just kind of stationed in one spot?
So, like I said, I did a year in Korea after I graduated from basic training in 2016. So I did a year in Korea, and since then I've been stationed in the DC area, right? So for that, just inherently because I'm military police, there's not a whole lot of traveling involved. That's inherent to the job. However, in my off time with friends and what have you, I've been, out to the West Coast, Vegas, Portland, Seattle, New York City, things like that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do at this stage of my life, and that the Army has provided me the opportunity to do, and it's been really nice. So
That's so cool.
yeah.
That is awesome that you get to travel a lot, you get to see a lot, and the connections that you make in the military too. I never served in the military. I do have friends that served in the military, and I can tell you the connections that they make are lifelong and span not only this country but all over the world.
Very much so. Yeah, absolutely. I think that the relationships that I formed just in the past 3 years, and Korea notwithstanding, I think could last me a lifetime for sure. So yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you, Chris?
So I am turning 24 in 2 days. So
well,
I'm
happy
still
early
23.
birthday. That's so cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Gosh, you're so young. Like, I feel like being a part of the old guard is like this, obviously it's a huge accomplishment and a very esteemed position. And you just seem so young to me to have acquired that already.
Yeah, it's interesting. I tell people this all the time, but relative to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier platoon, I'm more or less an old dog. I would say that the average age of a soldier who's a part of the tomb is about 20 years old. So it's not like these are old guys that are down there. I mean, these are young men and women who are down there with a almost incomprehensible amount of responsibility on their shoulders, and they just incredibly proud to have been associated with them and to be associated with them in any means.
So this is going off your script, Kenny, but so I've heard that you guys are held to a very high standard of rules, like for your entire life once you're part of the old guard. Is that true?
So that's another interesting question that I get asked a lot, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news because I think that a lot of times people want to there's like this inclination to make us out to seem maybe less than human, or like we plug ourselves in at night. But the truth of the matter is we are human beings, right? So one of the rumors you might be talking about is that we're never allowed to drink again. That is, I think, something that just kind of got taken through the telephone game, right? So obviously, when we're working, we're not allowed to drink. And then another thing that you may have heard is that we live in the barracks under the tomb, right? And that is also not quite accurate. That we work on these 26-hour shifts, and when we're there, we'll have the opportunity to, in between shifts and in between all of the work that needs to get done, and believe me, there's a lot of it, you'll have an opportunity to lay your head down for maybe an hour or two and get some sleep throughout that time. And so there are bunks down there and things to pretty much make us able to sustain a 26-hour shift. Washer and dryer, full kitchen, a bathroom with a shower, some bunks, and then that's pretty much all you would need for about 26 hours. Anything after that, you gotta kind of head home. And so on that note, I have an apartment in the DC area. Most of the soldiers live in the Army barracks on Joint Base Meyer Henderson Hall, which is adjacent to Arlington National Cemetery. So they're very close. But for the most part, all of us have either private residences or live in the Army barracks.
Well, that helps with the commute, I guess, right?
Very much so. Yeah, I think some soldiers walk in the morning. Yep, absolutely.
Just head downstairs for a little bit. Is there like a certain number of you guys? Is there like a certain core group of you that's constantly in rotation to do this? Or is it just fluctuating? Or how does that work?
I'll tell you this. One thing that this is one of those things that we're not quite allowed to talk about, but I'll say this, and that is that we are an infantry platoon size element. Obviously, that number is always changing, always kind of moving around. But you can get a general understanding of what that is if you can Google an infantry platoon. On any given day that you come to Arlington National Cemetery, there is only about a third of the platoon there at any given time, right? The other platoon or the rest of the platoon is off on recovery or what have you. So yeah, so there's one squad there at any given time that's actually physically protecting the tomb.
So, Chris, how did you choose being a military policeman?
So like I said, there's been a lot of evolution that's taken place since my time in the military began. But I think that when I joined, I thought initially that maybe I wanted to be a police officer. And so I thought that was a really good track to get in there and having that experience under my belt, and then, leaving the military and possibly having a job or getting a job as a police officer in the civilian world. That's kind of how I got into that. But I think that, while my end goal may have, shifted or moved or, changed just like anybody else, I don't think that I would do anything differently. The MP Corps has been incredibly good to me. I would do it again in a second.
How does one go from being in the military police to being a candidate for the old guard? Can you talk about that or the selection process? Or
So I'll tell you how it all kind of happened. It's a little long-winded, so you'll have to bear with me. But so young, 18-year-old private seaman was serving in Korea. My first sergeant at the time asked me and a couple of other soldiers whom he thought were good fits for the unit that we should apply to it, and that he thought that we would be good candidates to come here and represent the United States Army, quite literally the nation and the world. And so we did the application packet to the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, and there are a bunch of prerequisites that you have to meet, including height and some other odds and ends things that need to be met in order for you to be accepted to come here. And that's the regiment. So that is about 1,600 soldiers, roughly speaking, that are serving in the Old Guard at any given time. From there, once you arrived at the Old Guard, I was assigned to the military police company here that handles law enforcement on Joint Base Myer-Henderson Hall. I spent roughly, 14 months working law enforcement on Fort Myer in Virginia, in Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia, and then on Fort McNair in DC. That was great, and I enjoyed it a great deal. I got to meet and be around a lot of really cool people and experiences, and it was overall just a really transformative time for me to really understand what I wanted. Now, to come back, when I was in 8th grade, I believe, I came to Washington, D.C., as do most kids who are from the northeastern part of the country, to D.C. on a field trip. And of course, we came to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And I just thought that was the ceiling, right? Like, there's nothing that I could ever do in my life that would ever come close to doing what these guys here do. And, we kind of just, we came, we saw it, and then we went about the rest of our trip. But this place kind of stayed with me. When I was asked in Korea if I wanted to go, my biggest motivator was knowing that that was a possibility in the future, that I could volunteer to hopefully get selected to go do it. Coming back, I did about 14 months with the MP company here. I'd probably ask someone every month, hey, can I go and be a guard at the tomb? Can I at least go try out, right? And they would tell me no, they would tell me no, they would tell me no. And then they finally said, okay, you can go and do that. And so I went to a tryout that they were holding in July of 2018 with about 14 other soldiers. To my surprise, selected me and 7 other guys to begin training to become sentinels at the tomb. And it's all kind of been, the rest is history, right?
so you had just been